Why does your mind sometimes trick you into believing you've lived this exact moment before? Why does déjà vu feel so vivid, so convincing, as if time itself had folded back on itself? And if it isn't prophecy or premonition, then what exactly is your brain doing when the present feels like the past? Welcome to NeuroNap Academy. Tonight we step into the science behind one of the strangest human experiences, from ancient philosophy to modern neuroscience. We'll uncover why the hippocampus confuses perception with memory, how the temporal lobe can spark familiarity signals, and why déjà vu visits the young more often than the old. But here's the deeper question. If your memory can make you believe you've already lived something that never happened, then how much of what you call real memory can you truly trust? And to make this journey complete, I've prepared a free, practical guide with a clear summary of tonight's video. You'll find it in the description, like a map you can return to whenever you need it. So lie back. Tonight we begin with the first truth, that strange feeling again, why déjà vu feels like living twice. You sit in an unfamiliar room. The window frame looks new but strangely recognizable, because a quiet signal in you whispers, "I've been here before." Your chest tightens and breath pauses. Therefore the present feels like an echo of the past, because that is déjà vu conviction without proof that a moment has already happened. The feeling lasts seconds but lingers because it isn't like recalling a birthday with context. Those memories come with where, when, and who. Therefore they open like pages you can point to. Déjà vu offers only recognition because the book won't open. Scientists call it a memory illusion, but the name underplays its grip because the sensation wraps ordinary reality in strangeness. It arrives without warning. Therefore you ask why a healthy brain would invent a memory that doesn't exist. Your mind recognizes in two ways. Recollection retrieves details because the hippocampus catalogues episodes, but familiarity merely signals this rings a bell because temporal lobe circuits match patterns fast. Both usually align, therefore feeling and evidence agree. Déjà vu appears when alignment slips because familiarity fires, but the hippocampus supplies no file. The inner archivist rings the bell, therefore you sense known, but the book stays shut, and reality bends for a heartbeat. Explanation helps but doesn't dissolve wonder because the experience tempts other stories, time folding, dreams leaking, hidden knowledge. History casts it as omen or past life. Therefore, even with scans and studies, a hush of mystery remains. You stand at a crossroads of logic and awe. The lab says timing error, but your gut says real. Therefore, the tension captivates, because we live between certainty and story. So déjà vu feels like a riddle in perception. You don't solve it as it happens, because you carry it afterward, turning it over. Therefore, it becomes a reminder that mind records reality, but also creates it. Picture stepping into a cafe you've never entered. The music and faces are new, but warmth spreads because two timelines briefly overlap, the one unfolding, therefore the one your mind swears it remembers. If the present can feel like the past without being so, then how much of experience is built not only on what is, but on stories your brain tells? That question leads forward, because this isn't private oddity. Nearly everyone reports it. Therefore déjà vu stands as a universal quirk, reminding us memory and perception aren't as solid as they seem. Imagine yourself walking down a street in a city you've never visited before. The stones under your feet are arranged in patterns unfamiliar to you. The smells drifting from nearby cafes carry spices that don't belong to your daily life. And yet, as you turn a corner, a wave passes over you. I know this place. It's an uncanny recognition, a map you didn't know you carried. This is déjà vu in one of its most striking forms, an experience so universal that it crosses geography, language, and culture. Across the world, people describe it in almost the same way, a sudden certainty that the present moment has already been lived. Some feel it in small gestures, a friend adjusting their glasses, a stranger dropping a coin. Others feel it in whole scenes, as if a fragment of memory had been lifted and replayed in perfect detail. Surveys suggest that the majority of humans, 2 out of 3, sometimes more, will experience déjà vu at least once in their lives. And for many, it happens multiple times, often in their youth. This suggests something not accidental, but deeply woven into the architecture of the brain. What makes it fascinating is how ordinary people, living in vastly different conditions, describe the sensation with the same words: strange, uncanny, eerie, as if time slipped. Ancient texts contain descriptions that sound eerily modern. Writers in the 19th century called it false recognition, or paramnesia, and philosophers before them speculated about moments when reality feels doubled. This is not a symptom isolated to one culture or one moment in history. It is a shared inheritance of being human. But why does it happen in healthy people? After all, most of our mental errors come from fatigue, stress, or illness. Déjà vu, however, appears in those with perfectly normal cognition. It often occurs in relaxed or everyday moments, walking, talking, traveling, when the mind is not distressed. That paradox is part of its allure, a glitch in a system that otherwise works remarkably well. Our brains are designed to distinguish between memory and present experience. Without that distinction, life would be chaos, and yet once in a while, the mechanism falters, and we glimpse the fragility of our mental boundaries. Science suggests that déjà vu belongs to the class of memory illusions. Much like optical illusions show us how vision works by tricking the eye, memory illusions reveal how recall functions by showing us what happens when it misfires. The fact that déjà vu is universal means the underlying system is shared by all brains, just as all eyes can be fooled by the same visual trick. In that sense, déjà vu is not a flaw but a feature. It shows us that memory is not a perfect record but an interpretive process, constantly balancing between past and present. Pause and consider. If most humans experience déjà vu, then it belongs to the fabric of consciousness itself. It isn't merely a private quirk, but a reminder that the brain is not just a storage device but a prediction machine. Every second it compares what you see, hear and feel against the vast archive of your life, and sometimes the comparison produces a false positive, a match that feels exact but is only approximate. Yet even with this explanation, the feeling remains mysterious. Why does the brain choose this corner, this voice, this room, to trick you into recognition? Why is the experience not just neutral, but often charged with emotion, sometimes comforting, sometimes eerie, as though a hidden truth were trying to surface? Philosophically, this raises another possibility. Maybe déjà vu is less about error and more about perspective. What if it is your brain reminding you that every moment of life is layered, that each second you live is already threaded with echoes of the past? In that view, déjà vu is not a malfunction, but a poetic message from your own nervous system. You have lived before, not in another life, but in the endless repetition of patterns that make you who you are. So déjà vu becomes more than a passing oddity. It becomes a mirror held up to human consciousness itself, telling us that no matter where you stand in Tokyo, in Cairo, in a quiet small town, your brain can turn the present into an uncanny echo of the past. And now, the natural question emerges. If it feels so much like memory, is it the same thing as remembering, or is it something entirely different? The next step is to explore what déjà vu is not, to peel away superstition and confusion so that the phenomenon stands clear. You are sitting with a group of friends, sharing dinner and laughter, when suddenly you feel it again, that creeping sensation that this very exchange, this angle of a smile, this tone of voice has already happened before. A few seconds later it dissolves, leaving you both curious and unsettled. Your rational mind intervenes, whispering, it can't be prophecy, it can't be a glimpse of the future. Yet the emotional weight of déjà vu tempts you to believe otherwise. For centuries, people have confused déjà vu with premonition. If you've had the sensation and then, days later, something similar occurred, you may have felt as though the déjà vu predicted it. But science draws a clear boundary. Déjà vu is not foresight. It is not a supernatural window. Instead, it is your brain's recognition system misfiring in the present, convincing you that what you are experiencing now has been stored before. This matters because the mind craves certainty. When it encounters something that feels familiar without cause, it wants to supply an explanation. Across cultures, humans have framed déjà vu as evidence of hidden powers, psychic visions, reincarnation, even divine signals. But careful study shows that these interpretations stem from the power of the feeling itself, not from evidence of prediction. The brain, when it makes a mistake, doesn't whisper, it shouts. It makes you believe what you are sensing, even if it's untrue. That conviction is what fuels the myth. Researchers have examined people who report déjà vu frequently and compared their experiences to actual memory recall. The difference is crucial. In memory, you can usually trace the context where you were, who was with you, when it happened. In déjà vu, the sense of familiarity arrives naked without context, like an echo detached from its source. That absence is what proves it isn't real recall. If it were a genuine memory, the details would eventually surface. They never do. Think of it this way. Imagine hearing a single musical note that feels intensely familiar, but without being able to place the song it belongs to. The note is real, your recognition of it is real, but the melody never follows. That is déjà vu. It is a memory cue without the memory, a spark without the fire, and because the human brain dislikes gaps, it sometimes fills the void with imagination, interpreting the sensation as foresight. Philosophically, this raises an interesting reflection. What does it say about us that when faced with an unexplained feeling, our first instinct is to assign it to mystery, to otherworldly meaning? Perhaps it speaks to our longing for life to contain secrets beyond the measurable. Or perhaps it reveals that the brain itself is not only an organ of logic, but of story. It doesn't settle for silence. It writes narratives into the gaps. And yet, once we accept that déjà vu is not prophecy, it does not lose its beauty. On the contrary, it becomes even more fascinating, because what could be more extraordinary than realizing that your own brain, built for survival and precision, occasionally tricks you with a moment so convincing it bends reality itself? That strangeness is not less magical than superstition, it is simply a magic grounded in biology. So déjà vu is not premonition, and it is not proof of past lives. But if it is not those things, then what is it? To understand, we must look back at the first thinkers who wrestled with it, those philosophers and early psychologists who tried to put words to a sensation that escapes language. Picture a philosopher in the late 19th century, sitting by lamplight with pen in hand, trying to capture the indescribable. He writes about a fleeting sense of familiarity, about time doubling back on itself. He gives it a name borrowed from French déjà vu, already seen. Long before brain scans and electrical recordings, people felt compelled to put this experience into words because it resisted explanation and yet demanded attention. The history of déjà vu is woven from both philosophy and psychology. Early thinkers debated whether it was evidence of the soul remembering past lives, or whether it reflected the imperfection of human perception. Plato, centuries earlier, had already written about memory as recollection of eternal truths, hinting that what feels new may simply be remembered knowledge. Later, mystics interpreted déjà vu as proof that the spirit transcends time, touching dimensions beyond the ordinary. By the 1800s, psychologists began to study it more systematically. They used terms like paramnesia, false memory, and sought to classify it as a mental phenomenon rather than a spiritual one. They interviewed patients, collected case studies, and noticed patterns. Déjà vu happened more often in youth than in old age, more often in moments of distraction than deep focus. Some doctors even considered it a mild hallucination, a slip of the mind that revealed its hidden workings. What is striking is how persistent the fascination has been. Writers in literature, from Dickens to Tolstoy, described characters struck by the uncanny repetition of experience. Philosophers like Bergson reflected on it as evidence of time's layered nature, moments folding over one another like waves on a shore. To them, déjà vu was not just a curiosity but a clue. Perhaps consciousness itself was built on overlapping strata of memory and perception. Imagine the courage it took for early scientists to push against the tide of superstition. Without the tools we have today, they insisted that déjà vu must have a natural cause. Their questions were simple but powerful. What if the brain occasionally confuses the act of perceiving with the act of remembering? What if familiarity can exist without an actual past event to anchor it? These questions laid the foundation for the scientific study that would follow. And yet philosophy still has a role. Science can describe the mechanisms, but philosophy reminds us of the meaning. When you experience déjà vu, it isn't only neurons firing, it is also an existential jolt, a moment that makes you question the flow of time and the stability of your identity. In that sense, the early philosophers were not wrong. Déjà vu does reveal something profound. It shows that perception is never purely in the present, but always entangled with what has been. This dual history, half philosophical, half scientific, mirrors the very sensation itself, part rational, part mysterious, and as psychology advanced, a more precise explanation began to emerge. Theories shifted from spiritual echoes to cognitive glitches, focusing on how memory is built, retrieved, and sometimes misfiled. So the story moves forward, from the lamplight musings of philosophers to the laboratory findings of neuroscientists. Quick pause. So far, it's universal, not prophecy, and early thinkers framed it as mystery. Therefore, we now treat déjà vu as a memory illusion to explain. Next, the modern mechanism. Why the brain flags familiar without a real memory. Section 5. You are standing in a bookstore, your hand brushing the spine of a book you have never opened, when a ripple of certainty courses through you. This moment has already happened. You know it cannot be true, yet the conviction is so powerful it overrides logic. The explanation most scientists turn to begins here, with memory itself, and with the possibility that your brain has confused what is happening now with something it thinks it remembers. In everyday life, memory works like a careful librarian. When you experience something, your brain encodes the details, the sights, sounds, smells, and files them into long-term storage. Later, when a familiar cue reappears, the brain retrieves the matching memory and presents it to you as recognition. Most of the time, this system is seamless. You walk into your kitchen, smell the aroma of coffee, and instantly remember the morning ritual of brewing it. The present matches the past, and the sense of familiarity is anchored by genuine recall. Déjà vu, however, seems to be the librarian ringing the bell without producing the book. The system signals familiarity, but the actual memory file does not exist. It is a false match, a kind of echo created by the brain's comparison machinery. The present moment feels as if it belongs to the past, even though it doesn't. In psychology, this is sometimes referred to as a false memory signal. How could such a slip occur in a brain evolved for precision? One possibility lies in the sheer speed of neural processing. The brain is constantly matching incoming sensory input with stored patterns. This rapid-fire comparison allows you to recognize faces in a crowd or songs after just a few notes. But speed comes at a cost. Occasionally, the brain declares a match where none exists. It is like a facial recognition system that insists a stranger is someone you know. Another theory considers how fragments of memory can overlap. Suppose you dream of a street with certain shapes of buildings, or you pass briefly through a similar environment years ago without truly noticing. Later, when you encounter a new street that shares those patterns, your brain misinterprets the overlap as proof of prior experience. What you feel is not recognition of the current scene, but the collision of partial similarities stored in your memory. Philosophically, this error raises profound questions. If your sense of reality depends so heavily on memory, what does it mean when memory betrays you? The moment of déjà vu is short, but it reminds you that perception is stitched together from fragile threads. You walk through life trusting that what feels real is real, but déjà vu proves that conviction can be manufactured. It shows that belief itself is not evidence. And yet, rather than undermining memory, this illusion reveals its power. The brain's recognition system is so persuasive that even when it misfires, you feel truth in the falsehood. The sensation overwhelms rational doubt. This teaches us something subtle. Our confidence in memory is not based on its accuracy, but on the intensity of the feeling it generates. Think of it as standing in front of a painting that you're certain you've seen before. No one can convince you otherwise in that instant, even if you know logically that it cannot be. The feeling is stronger than the fact. Déjà vu, then, is not just a memory error. It is a demonstration of how deeply feelings of recognition shape your sense of reality. And the brain regions responsible for this trick are not random. They cluster in areas designed to manage memory, particularly in the hippocampus and its neighboring structures. To understand why the glitch occurs, we must descend into this inner architecture, the labyrinth where episodes of your life are encoded, stored, and retrieved. Picture a library so vast it stretches into darkness. Every shelf lined with the episodes of your life. Your first day of school, the taste of an apple bitten in summer, the voice of someone you loved. At the center of this library stands a curved structure deep in your brain, no larger than your thumb, yet powerful enough to keep this entire archive alive. This is the hippocampus, a word that means seahorse because of its shape, and it is the keeper of your episodic memory. Whenever you live through something new, the hippocampus encodes it, binding together the sights, sounds, emotions, and contexts into one coherent memory. Later, when you try to recall the experience, it is the hippocampus that pulls these scattered threads back together, presenting them as a story you can relive. Without it, memory fragments would remain scattered, like loose pages without a book. In déjà vu, scientists believe this archivist may stumble. Imagine the hippocampus attempting to check whether the current moment has already been catalogued. If the signal is noisy, delayed, or misaligned, the brain might flag the scene as familiar, even though it has not been stored before. The archivist rings the recognition bell, but the matching volume isn't actually there. You feel as though you've remembered, but what you've experienced is a ghost of memory, a recognition without substance. Studies of patients with temporal lobe epilepsy provide intriguing clues. Many of them report déjà vu episodes just before seizures, and brain recordings often show unusual activity in the hippocampus and surrounding regions. This suggests that the hippocampus is central to the sensation. When its electrical patterns become unstable, it can produce the uncanny illusion of recognition. But here is the paradox. In people without epilepsy, déjà vu still occurs. This implies that the phenomenon is not a disease marker, but a byproduct of normal memory processes, tiny misfires that most brains experience occasionally. Think of the hippocampus as a vigilant sentry, constantly comparing new input against stored episodes. Most of the time, the match is precise. You walk into a cafe and recognize the smell of roasted beans from countless mornings before. But if the hippocampus misaligns the comparison, perhaps due to stress, fatigue, or even chance, your brain may signal remembered without context. That's déjà vu, the present tagged as past without justification. Philosophically, the hippocampus is not just a storehouse. It is also a bridge between who you were and who you are. Every time it retrieves a memory, it reshapes it, weaving the past into your current identity. Déjà vu reminds us of this fragile bridge. If the hippocampus can momentarily misfire, then the continuity of your life story is more delicate than you might believe. You trust your memories as anchors of selfhood, but déjà vu reveals they are not perfect anchors, they are shifting tides. And yet, the hippocampus is only part of the story. Familiarity, that softer sense of "I've known this before," doesn't always require detailed recollection. It arises from another system, neighboring but distinct. To grasp why déjà vu feels so real, we must look beyond the hippocampus and into the medial temporal lobe, where familiarity is born. You step into a gallery filled with paintings you've never seen. One canvas draws your eyes. The brush strokes are unfamiliar, the subject unknown, and yet a shiver of recognition slides down your spine. It feels as though you have seen it before, though no memory surfaces to prove it. This sensation of familiarity without detail is not a trick of imagination. It is the work of brain regions surrounding the hippocampus, particularly in the medial temporal lobe. The hippocampus, as you've heard, is the archivist of episodes, weaving context into coherent stories. But nearby, another structure acts like a pattern detector, the perirhinal cortex. Instead of storing detailed episodes, it specializes in a softer judgment. This feels known. It is less about recalling when or where, and more about gauging whether something has crossed your path before. Think of it as the quick glance of a security guard, scanning faces at the door. Most pass unnoticed, but when a trace of recognition stirs, the guard alerts you without needing to remember the person's entire story. When déjà vu strikes, scientists believe the perirhinal cortex may play a starring role. Imagine it sending a strong signal of familiarity, like a flashing light saying, "Yes, you've seen this," but the hippocampus cannot provide the memory to confirm it. The result is conflict. One part of your brain insists the present is known, while another fails to supply the evidence. That conflict is what makes déjà vu so powerful. It is not just familiarity, but familiarity without anchor. Brain imaging studies support this. Volunteers exposed to memory tasks sometimes report déjà vu-like sensations, and scans reveal activity in temporal lobe regions tied to recognition. It is as though the brain momentarily short-circuits, activating the circuitry of memory without the memory itself. The misfire lasts only seconds, but its impact is profound because it tricks the mind into believing an experience is recycled. Philosophically, this points to something deeper about how humans live. Familiarity guides countless decisions, whether a place feels safe, whether a person seems trustworthy, whether an idea resonates. You often act not on full recall, but on the warmth or strangeness of familiarity. Déjà vu exposes the fragility of that compass. It shows that even when the sense of familiarity is strong, it can be misleading. The world can feel known when it is, in fact, entirely new. And yet there is comfort in this design. The brain evolved to make quick judgments. Detailed recollection takes time and energy, but familiarity offers speed. It allows you to recognize danger in an instant or to spot an ally without effort. If déjà vu is the price of such efficiency, a rare false positive, then perhaps it is not a flaw at all, but the cost of a system designed to keep you alive. Picture again the painting in the gallery. Your brain whispers that you've seen it before, though you know you have not. For a moment, the world folds. In that fold lies the secret. Memory is not one system but two, sometimes aligned, sometimes diverging. Déjà vu is born in the gap between them. But this duality does more than explain déjà vu. It also reveals the architecture of memory itself. There are, in fact, two roads your mind can take, one paved with details and context, the other with the simple glow of familiarity. When they separate, the uncanny arises. To understand fully, we must walk both roads. You are walking through a quiet park at dusk. The trees sway, and a particular arrangement of shadows makes you pause. It feels like you have stood here before, though no memory arrives to explain why. This is where two roads of memory intersect, and sometimes slip apart. Your brain doesn't rely on a single path to know the world. One path is detailed and slow. It tells you when and where something happened. It draws on the hippocampus, which binds together sensory fragments into episodes like chapters in a book. This path is what allows you to say, "I remember meeting her at the cafe last Tuesday, and she wore a red scarf." It's memory with context, rich and specific. The other path is quick and light. It doesn't need details. It simply asks, "Does this feel familiar?" This is the work of regions like the perirhinal cortex, scanning for patterns you've encountered before. It is recognition without story. When you pass a stranger who looks vaguely like someone from your past, it's this system that nudges you, whispering that something about them feels known. Most of the time, these two systems work together. Familiarity sparks and recollection follows. The glow of recognition is supported by the recall of details, giving you confidence that the memory is true. But déjà vu appears when these roads diverge. Familiarity flares without recollection. You feel certainty without evidence, recognition without memory. Scientists call this the dual route theory. It proposes that familiarity and recollection are separate processes, running in parallel. When they align, memory feels solid. When they conflict, the illusion of déjà vu emerges. Picture two musicians playing a duet. Most of the time, their notes harmonize, but if one jumps ahead or lags behind, the melody stumbles. The listener still hears music, but something feels off. Déjà vu is that stumble in the symphony of memory. Laboratory experiments support this view. In recognition tests, participants sometimes claim they know a word or picture without recalling when they encountered it. Brain imaging shows distinct patterns: hippocampal activation for recollection, perirhinal for familiarity. The dual route model explains why you can be utterly convinced of recognition even when no actual memory exists. Philosophically, this split tells us something profound about human experience. We live not only through the details we recall, but through the aura of familiarity that surrounds us. You may walk into a room and feel instantly at ease, not because you remember it, but because something about it resonates with your pattern detection system. Familiarity colors life with meaning, even in the absence of fact. Déjà vu is simply the most dramatic reminder of this truth, that your sense of reality is built as much on feeling as on memory. Consider how often you rely on this silent compass. You trust a person because their manner feels familiar. You avoid a street because something about it unsettles you. These judgments arise not from episodic recall, but from the quick signal of familiarity. Déjà vu shows what happens when the compass points firmly in one direction, but the map provides no explanation. The result is dissonance, a moment that demands your attention precisely because it cannot be resolved. And so déjà vu is not a mistake in the trivial sense. It is the shadow of a larger truth. Memory is not singular but dual, and the harmony between its systems is delicate. When the duet falters, you glimpse the machinery of mind exposed. But there is another dimension to this story. For some people, déjà vu is not an occasional oddity, but a frequent prelude to something more serious, the bursts of electrical activity known as seizures. Checkpoint. Familiarity can fire without recollection, therefore the duet splits and the illusion appears. Up next, the electrical angle, temporal lobe sparks and lab evidence that can provoke déjà vu. Imagine lightning flashing inside your brain, not the kind that splits the sky, but tiny electrical storms rippling through delicate tissue. In most people, the currents of the brain follow well-worn paths, carrying signals smoothly from neuron to neuron. But sometimes, especially in certain conditions, these currents surge and misfire. When they do, the first sensation is often déjà vu. This connection has been known for decades. Patients with temporal lobe epilepsy, the kind of epilepsy that originates near the hippocampus and medial temporal cortex, often report intense déjà vu just before a seizure. It can arrive as a warning, a fleeting but unmistakable sign that the brain's electrical rhythms are slipping out of sync. These episodes are so vivid that they are sometimes called aura, a kind of sensory prelude to the storm that follows. To scientists, this link has been invaluable. By studying people with epilepsy, researchers discovered that déjà vu can be triggered by stimulating certain areas of the temporal lobe with electricity. In some cases, when doctors mapped the brain before surgery, a mild pulse delivered to memory-related regions instantly produced the feeling of déjà vu. Patients would insist they had experienced the test before, though they had not. The sensation was real to them, even though it was artificially induced. This tells us something crucial. Déjà vu is not mystical. It is rooted in the brain's wiring, in the delicate timing of its electrical circuits. A small surge, a misalignment of firing neurons, can be enough to create the illusion of repetition, just as static can distort a radio signal. A brief electrical irregularity can distort the sense of time. But here is where the paradox deepens. Most people who experience déjà vu do not have epilepsy. Their brains are healthy, their electrical rhythms stable. This suggests that déjà vu in everyday life is not a seizure, but a micro-moment where the same circuits briefly misfire without causing harm. It is like a spark that flares and disappears before it becomes a fire. Philosophically, this raises a question: how fragile is our sense of reality? If such a small surge can alter it, you trust your brain to deliver the present as it is, yet déjà vu reveals that perception can be bent by the tiniest of glitches. In that sense, we all live one step away from illusion, even in ordinary life. And still, there is beauty in this fragility. Déjà vu reminds us that the brain is not a machine delivering flawless data, but a living system, complex, adaptive, sometimes imperfect. Its errors reveal its design. By studying the lightning in epileptic brains, science glimpses the circuitry that underlies memory in all of us. So déjà vu is not only a curiosity, but a window into the architecture of recognition. The electrical sparks show us where in the brain familiarity lives, how it can be switched on even without memory. They show that the uncanny feeling is not supernatural, but neurological, a quirk of timing in the storms of the mind. And yet electricity is not the only explanation. Another theory suggests that déjà vu may arise from something subtler still. Not storms, but tiny delays in the pathways of perception, as if two streams of experience arrive slightly out of sync. To see how the brain might trick itself through timing alone, we must follow the next thread in the mystery. You are standing in front of a window, watching rain slide down the glass. One droplet begins its path, and a second follows a fraction of a second later. At first glance, they seem to move together, but if you look closely, one always lags behind. Some scientists believe that déjà vu is born in a similar way, two streams of perception, slightly out of sync, creating the illusion that the present has already happened. This idea is sometimes called the dual processing delay theory. It proposes that when your brain processes sensory information, it does so through multiple channels at once. Visual details may travel along one pathway, spatial details along another, and emotional tone along a third. Usually these channels converge seamlessly, giving you the smooth experience of a unified moment. But if one stream arrives just a fraction late, your brain may interpret it as a second experience. The first perception feels like memory, and the delayed one feels like the present. Think of it like hearing an echo in a canyon. The sound is yours, but the delay makes it feel separate, as if someone else has spoken. In déjà vu, your mind becomes its own canyon, bouncing the present back to you, as if it belonged to the past. Research has tried to capture this effect experimentally. Some studies show that when people are exposed to nearly identical scenes or stimuli twice in quick succession, they sometimes report déjà vu. The repetition is so fast that they don't consciously register the first exposure, yet the brain treats the second as familiar. It is not that they remember it, it is that the delayed overlap mimics the pattern of memory. Philosophically, this explanation is intriguing. If reality depends on timing, then even tiny delays can fracture it. What you call the present may simply be a synchronization of signals. When they fall out of rhythm, you glimpse the instability beneath the surface of perception. Déjà vu, then, is not a vision of another time, but a reminder of how delicate your sense of time truly is. This theory also underscores the speed at which the brain works. Nerve signals travel at astonishing velocities, but even milliseconds matter. In a system where recognition is built on timing, a minor hiccup can ripple upward into consciousness. You don't notice the delay itself, you notice its interpretation, the eerie conviction that you've lived this before. Pause and imagine, what if every perception you have is in a sense already delayed? Light takes time to reach your eyes, signals take time to cross synapses, the brain takes time to assemble them. In this sense you are always living slightly in the past, your mind continuously catching up. Déjà vu may simply exaggerate this truth, pulling the curtain back to show the lag between world and awareness. And yet, even this explanation doesn't cover every instance. Déjà vu can happen not only in perception but in dreams, where time has no external anchor. To understand how the sleeping mind weaves déjà vu into waking life, we must step into the territory where memory fragments and dreamscapes collide. You wake from a dream you cannot fully remember. The images slip through your fingers like water, leaving only a faint impression, a hallway that seemed familiar, a face without a name, a landscape blurred by distance. Hours or days later, you step into a place in waking life and feel a jolt. I have been here before. In that moment, the forgotten dream seems to echo through the present. This is one of the most haunting possibilities about déjà vu, that it may be seeded by fragments of dreams. Dreams are peculiar archives. During sleep, the brain rehearses, recombines, and replays fragments of memory. The hippocampus and surrounding areas remain active, weaving together images and stories that rarely follow logical rules. Many of these dream experiences are not encoded as solid, retrievable memories. They fade on waking, leaving behind only a trace, like footprints erased by the tide, but traces can still influence you. When you later encounter something resembling a dream fragment, your brain may interpret the match as lived experience, and déjà vu blooms. Consider how many times you wake with a fleeting sense of having dreamed something important, only to forget it minutes later. Yet somewhere deep in your neural circuitry, the patterns remain. Déjà vu could be the ghost of such patterns, a faint resonance between dream and reality. You are not remembering the dream in detail, but your recognition system lights up because something in the present resembles that lost fragment. Some studies support this. People who report more vivid dreams or greater dream recall also tend to report more frequent déjà vu. This correlation suggests that the brain systems governing dreams and déjà vu may overlap, both rooted in the networks of memory and recognition. The idea is not that dreams predict reality, but that reality sometimes resembles the shuffled images of dreams closely enough to trigger the sensation of repetition. Philosophically, this opens a door into the blurred boundary between waking and dreaming. If déjà vu can be seeded by dreams, then perhaps your sense of reality is stitched not only from what you have lived, but from what you have imagined. Life becomes a tapestry of both memory and dream, with déjà vu marking the places where the threads cross. It raises an unsettling thought. How much of what you call recognition is really the residue of things that never happened, at least not in waking life? There is a quiet poetry in this possibility. Dreams are rehearsals, improvisations of the mind, ways of testing scenarios and feelings without consequence. If déjà vu is sometimes a dream resurfacing, then the sensation may be a reminder that your inner world is always shaping your outer one. You live in the present, but the present is continually colored by both remembered and forgotten images of the past and of the dream world. And yet not everyone experiences déjà vu equally. Studies suggest that the phenomenon is far more common in youth than in older age. Why would a healthy young brain be more prone to these glitches of recognition than an older one? The answer may lie in the flexibility of memory itself and the way the brain changes over time. Imagine being 20 years old, traveling to a new city for the first time. Every corner feels fresh. Every building is a discovery. Then suddenly, in the midst of all this novelty, déjà vu strikes. The cobblestones, the way the sunlight cuts between the rooftops, the scent of roasted chestnuts in the air. You are certain you have stood here before. Now imagine being 70, walking through the same city. The scene is still beautiful, but the sensation of déjà vu is far less likely to visit you. This age difference is not an accident. Studies show that déjà vu is most common in young people and tends to decline steadily with age. Teenagers and young adults report the highest frequency, while older adults often describe it as rare or nearly absent. Why would the same brain phenomenon that is so universal in youth fade as the years progress? One explanation is the flexibility of the young brain. In youth, the hippocampus and surrounding memory systems are highly plastic, constantly encoding, retrieving, and reshaping experiences. This very dynamism increases the chance of misfires. Like a pianist practicing at high speed, a young brain is more likely to hit false notes. Déjà vu could be one of those false notes, an occasional byproduct of a system tuned for rapid learning. Another factor may be the sheer novelty of youth. When you are young, nearly everything is a first job, first relationship, first city visited. Novelty taxes the recognition system, forcing it to make quick judgments about unfamiliar input. With more opportunities for overlap between new experiences and stored fragments, déjà vu is more likely to occur. By contrast, older adults encounter fewer radically new situations, and the recognition system may operate with greater caution. Neurobiology also offers clues. Dopamine, a chemical messenger tied to learning, novelty, and reward, appears to play a role in déjà vu. Young adults have more robust dopaminergic activity, which may amplify both memory encoding and the sensations of familiarity. As dopamine levels decline with age, so too may the intensity of these uncanny experiences. Philosophically, this decline with age invites reflection. Does the rarity of déjà vu in later years symbolize a settling of the mind, a shift from the restless weaving of patterns to a calmer acceptance of reality as it is? Or does it represent a loss, a fading of the brain's ability to surprise itself with the uncanny? In either case, it reminds us that perception is not static but changes as we do. There is also a more existential lens. In youth, life feels open-ended, the future vast and uncertain. Déjà vu mirrors that uncertainty by destabilizing the present. In later life, with more of the story behind than ahead, the brain may cling more tightly to clarity. Perhaps the waning of déjà vu is less about decline and more about anchoring, about the mind choosing stability over mystery. Still, for those who experience déjà vu often in youth, the sensation can be intense and memorable, and certain conditions, stress, fatigue, travel, can make it more likely to appear. Where are we now? Youth, high plasticity/novelty, dopamine, therefore more false positives. Aging anchors prediction, therefore fewer illusions. Next triggers stress, fatigue, travel, dopamine salience, and cousins like Jamais vu. You are rushing through an airport after little sleep, the announcements echoing overhead, the crowd pressing forward in waves. Your eyes catch the curve of a corridor, the glint of polished floor, the hurried steps of strangers, and suddenly, the world folds in on itself. I've been here before. You pause, shaken, even though you know this is your first time in this terminal. This is how triggers often set the stage for déjà vu, a perfect storm of fatigue, stress, novelty, and the unfamiliar pressing in all at once. Researchers have long noted that déjà vu does not arrive evenly across all situations. Certain conditions make it more likely. Fatigue is one. When you are tired, your brain's timing becomes less precise. The hippocampus and its neighboring regions may struggle to keep signals in perfect synchrony. A momentary delay in processing can spark the illusion of repetition, as if the brain replayed the present twice. Stress is another. High stress floods the nervous system with chemicals that sharpen some processes while disrupting others. Recognition may fire too quickly, declaring familiarity where none exists. Travel and new environments are perhaps the most obvious triggers. When you step into a place filled with details your brain has never processed before, the system that checks novelty against memory works overtime. In that rapid-fire scanning, even a faint similarity to something you once saw, a pattern of tiles, the color of a wall, the rhythm of footsteps can create a false match. Suddenly, the new feels old, the moment feels borrowed. Even mundane daily life can spark déjà vu when patterns overlap. A room arranged in a way that mirrors one you once entered, a conversation echoing the rhythm of words spoken years earlier, a stranger's gesture that recalls a long-forgotten friend, all can trigger the sensation. Your brain thrives on patterns, and when patterns collide, recognition can misfire. What unites these triggers is vulnerability in the system. Fatigue reduces precision, stress alters chemical balance, novelty demands rapid judgments. All of them increase the odds that familiarity will arise without memory, that the brain's lightning-fast comparisons will mistake the present for the past. Philosophically, this suggests something humbling, that your sense of time and truth is at the mercy of context. In calm, rested moments, the brain may play fewer tricks. In strained or novel ones, the seams of perception loosen, and the uncanny slips through. Déjà vu becomes less a rare anomaly and more a reminder of how context shapes reality. And yet, there is also a strange beauty in this fragility. Consider how often your mind works flawlessly, guiding you through unfamiliar streets, sorting faces, making judgments. Déjà vu is the exception, but in its exception it reveals the extraordinary complexity of what usually goes right. Still, triggers tell only part of the story. To understand the emotional texture of déjà vu, the strange intensity that makes it unforgettable, we must look at a chemical that colors experience itself, dopamine, the brain's messenger of salience and surprise. Picture a spark of excitement when you taste a new food, or the rush of pleasure when you recognize a favorite song. These moments are powered by dopamine, a chemical messenger that colors experience with meaning. Dopamine is not simply about pleasure, it is about noticing, learning, and tagging moments as significant. And here lies a clue. Dopamine may also be involved in the strangeness of déjà vu. When déjà vu strikes, the sensation is not bland, it is charged, often accompanied by a wave of curiosity or unease. This intensity suggests that the brain's salience system is engaged. Dopamine plays a key role in this system, flagging certain perceptions as important. Normally, dopamine helps you learn what matters, the face of a loved one, the location of food, the sound of danger, but sometimes the flag is raised in error, a neutral moment is tagged as meaningful, and you feel a sudden, inexplicable conviction, this has happened before. Experiments provide hints of this connection. Dopaminergic pathways, especially those linking the midbrain to memory regions in the temporal lobe, are active during recognition. Drugs that alter dopamine levels are known to influence memory illusions, sometimes intensifying feelings of familiarity. It is as though dopamine turns up the volume on the brain's recognition signal, making the experience feel more real than it is. Consider how this would play out in daily life. You are tired walking through a train station, and a particular sound or smell catches you. The recognition system flickers, uncertain. At the same time, dopamine surges slightly, tagging the moment as significant. The result is not a vague hunch but a full-bodied sensation, powerful enough to override rational doubt. This may explain why déjà vu feels so compelling. The chemical that usually teaches you truth is now amplifying an illusion. Philosophically, this is revealing. Your sense of what is real is not simply built on facts, but on feelings of salience. You trust certain moments, not because they are objectively special, but because your brain's chemistry marks them as such. Déjà vu exposes this hidden truth. Reality is filtered not just by perception, but by the chemical weight assigned to each perception. There is also a broader reflection here. Dopamine is tied to novelty, reward, and motivation. In youth, when dopamine systems are more active, déjà vu is more common. In age, as dopamine declines, so too does the intensity of such illusions. Perhaps déjà vu is a byproduct of a brain tuned to notice, to seek patterns, to flag meaning in the midst of noise. It is the side effect of a system designed not for perfect truth, but for survival. Think of it like a compass that occasionally swings wildly when near a magnet. Most of the time, it points true north, but when distorted, it still feels authoritative, and you follow it instinctively. Déjà vu is the compass needle shaking, pulled by invisible chemistry. But déjà vu does not exist in isolation. It has cousins, strange memory phenomena that distort familiarity in the opposite direction. To truly understand why déjà vu feels so uncanny, we must compare it with its relatives, especially the phenomena known as jamais vu, when the familiar suddenly feels alien. Imagine sitting at your own desk, the same one you've worked at for years. The papers are stacked as usual, the pen lies where it always does, the computer hums softly, yet suddenly, the scene feels foreign, as though you are encountering it for the first time. You know logically that it is yours, but the sense of familiarity vanishes. This unsettling opposite of déjà vu is called jamais vu, never seen. Where déjà vu tricks you into believing a new moment is old, jamais vu strips away the feeling of recognition from what is deeply familiar. People often describe it as eerie, sometimes even frightening. A common example happens with language. Repeat a simple word like door or bread 30 times, and eventually the word begins to lose its meaning. It feels alien, hollow, no longer tied to the concept you know. This linguistic form of jamais vu shows how fragile the link between perception and recognition can be. Cognitive scientists see déjà vu and jamais vu as two sides of the same coin. Both are errors in the brain's recognition system. In déjà vu, familiarity is triggered without memory. In jamais vu, memory is present, but the sensation of familiarity is absent. It is as though the brain's signal of recognition is turned up in one case and turned down in the other. Both reveal how much your sense of reality depends on an invisible emotional tag. This is known. Without it, even your own life can feel foreign. There are other related phenomena too. Presque vu, or almost seen, describes the frustrating tip of the tongue state when you feel a word or idea hovering just beyond reach. Confabulation, another cousin, occurs when the brain fabricates a memory to fill a gap, leaving the person convinced it really happened. Together, these phenomena sketch a picture of memory as fluid, fallible, and deeply tied to feeling. Philosophically, these distortions remind us that recognition is not the same as truth. The desk in front of you does not change whether it feels familiar or not. What changes is your brain's interpretation. Familiarity is not a property of the world, it is a property of the mind, and when the mind withholds it, reality can feel alien even in the most ordinary settings. This realization can be unsettling. If familiarity can vanish from your own surroundings, what else do you take for granted that depends on such fragile signals? Trust, belonging, identity, all rely on the continuity of recognition. Jamais vu shows how easily that continuity can fray. Déjà vu, in turn, shows how easily it can fabricate itself. Together, they expose the delicate scaffolding on which your sense of reality is built. And yet there is also wonder here. These glitches do not destroy the system. They illuminate it. They remind you that what feels solid, home, language, memory, is in fact maintained by fragile networks firing in harmony. To experience jamais vu or déjà vu is to glimpse the machinery of mind directly, to feel the ground shift beneath the ordinary. So déjà vu is not alone. It belongs to a family of illusions that reveal memory's architecture. But among them, déjà vu remains the most convincing, the one that feels most like truth. Why? Because when it strikes, the brain activates the same networks it uses for genuine memory. Long-form recap. We mapped familiarity versus recollection, timing misalignments, dream echoes, age effects, and an evolutionary safety check. Therefore, déjà vu is a process error that reveals design. Final stretch. Lab recreations, myths debunked, and what it teaches about memory and prediction. You are sitting in a cafe, listening to the clink of cups and the low hum of conversation. The smell of roasted beans drifts through the air, the golden light filters through the window, and suddenly a wave of certainty washes over you. I have been here before. Not once, not vaguely, but with absolute conviction. You could swear you remember this exact moment, the angle of the chair, the flicker of the candle, the barista calling out an order, yet logic insists you have never entered this cafe. You are caught between two truths. Memory tells you it is real, reason tells you it is impossible. Why does déjà vu feel so real? Why is the sensation not a faint curiosity, but a full-bodied conviction? To answer, we must look at how the brain constructs memory, and how it activates the same machinery during déjà vu as it does during genuine recall. Inside your brain, recognition and recollection involve networks of regions that work in concert. The hippocampus encodes episodes with detail. The perirhinal cortex signals familiarity. The parahippocampal cortex processes spatial context, where events occur. The prefrontal cortex evaluates the accuracy of memories, weighing whether an impression should be trusted. In déjà vu, something uncanny happens. Studies show that many of the same regions activate, particularly the recognition circuitry. Functional brain scans of participants induced into déjà vu-like states reveal that the hippocampus and parahippocampal regions can show activity similar to when a genuine memory is retrieved. The difference is that the detailed content never arrives. The sensation of familiarity comes first and strongest, convincing you it is memory, even though the book of detail is missing. When you recall an actual memory, these areas light up in synchrony. It is not just one spark, but a cascade. The hippocampus retrieves details. The perirhinal provides recognition, the parahippocampal adds place, and the prefrontal cortex signs off, saying yes, this is real. The result is a unified, convincing experience of remembering. This explains why déjà vu carries such weight. It is not just a vague impression, it is the same machinery that validates real memories, mistakenly firing without support. The brain doesn't treat it as hypothesis, it treats it as truth. Think about what makes memory powerful. It is not the factual accuracy, it is the feeling of knowing. When you recognize a friend's face, you don't need to rationalize. The recognition blooms instantly and carries authority. Familiarity has evolutionary value. It tells you who is safe, where you belong, what you can trust. That authority is so deeply ingrained that when familiarity arises falsely, the mind still bows to it. Déjà vu is essentially a false positive in the familiarity system. The perirhinal cortex raises its hand, insisting you know this moment, and the rest of the brain accepts the verdict. Even without supporting detail, the conviction feels unshakable. You are not fooled into thinking, this seems similar. You are convinced this has happened. Philosophically, this points to something striking. Truth in human experience is not always about evidence. It is about conviction. You believe what feels true, and feeling is mediated by chemistry and circuitry. Déjà vu exposes the scaffolding of belief itself. Scientists have tested this by deliberately creating situations where familiarity is triggered without memory. For example, by presenting participants with words or images similar to those they've seen before but not identical, researchers find that people often report a strong sense of recognition. Brain scans show overlapping activity with real memory, particularly in the recognition circuits. In some cases, participants will insist with confidence that they have encountered the item before, even when they have not. To understand the depth of this, imagine two mirrors facing one another. In one, the real reflection appears. In the other, an illusion of depth stretches infinitely, repeating without substance. Memory is the real mirror, anchored, specific, grounded in events. Déjà vu is the infinite reflection, convincing in appearance, but hollow beneath the surface. Yet when you look into the infinite mirror, your eyes are tricked. You see depth, even though you know it is an illusion. Déjà vu functions in the same way. The brain simulates the sensation of memory so convincingly that you cannot distinguish the illusion from the truth. Here lies another paradox. The brain is designed to prioritize what feels meaningful. Dopamine, as we saw earlier, reinforces moments flagged as salient. If déjà vu is mistakenly tagged as meaningful, the brain not only convinces you it is real, but also convinces you it matters. The intensity is disproportionate to the event itself. This suggests that the machinery of memory does not merely reflect experience, it constructs experience. The brain builds the feeling of remembering from patterns of activation. If those patterns arise falsely, the mind still interprets them as truth. Déjà vu is one of the clearest windows into this constructive nature of memory. But there is another layer, emotion. Déjà vu is not neutral. It often arrives with a tinge of strangeness, wonder, or even dread. This emotional charge is thought to come from the limbic system, particularly the amygdala, which attaches emotional tone to perceptions. When the recognition system misfires, the amygdala amplifies the sensation, making it feel important. This may be why déjà vu sometimes feels like a message or sign, even though it is simply a glitch. Philosophically, this reflects the human tendency to read meaning into anomalies. When something feels charged, we assume it holds significance. Déjà vu becomes not just an oddity, but a potential prophecy, a spiritual sign, a clue to hidden truths. The brain's chemistry fuels the myth, turning a neural hiccup into a mystical experience. Think of it as walking on a path you have never taken, but one that matches the blueprint of many paths you've walked before. The steps feel rehearsed, the surroundings feel known, and the brain interprets that resonance as evidence you have walked here already. There is one more layer that deepens the illusion: prediction. The brain is not a passive recorder, it is a prediction engine. At every moment, it forecasts what will happen next, based on patterns from the past. When reality matches prediction precisely, the brain registers smooth continuity, but sometimes, when prediction aligns too perfectly, it may feel like foreknowledge. Déjà vu could be the brain recognizing that the present fits so closely with its prediction that it mistakes it for memory. Philosophically, this points to a profound truth. The present is always entangled with the past and the future. Déjà vu may be the moment when those threads knot, when the brain's anticipation and its memory collide so tightly that time itself feels doubled. Consider how this plays out in life. You are in conversation with someone new, and déjà vu strikes. For a moment you feel as though you know them deeply, as though the dialogue has happened before. The conviction is strong enough that you may hesitate, wondering if fate or destiny is at play. Rationally, you dismiss it, but emotionally, the moment lingers. This duality, rational doubt and emotional conviction, is the essence of déjà vu's power. It shows how the brain's systems of memory, recognition, and emotion can combine to produce not just a fleeting thought, but a fully embodied belief. You don't just think it is real, you feel it is real. At its core, déjà vu reveals the fragility of reality itself. If your certainty about memory can be manufactured by the brain's circuits, then what does it mean to know something? How much of your life is built not on fact, but on the feeling of truth? Déjà vu is a reminder that reality is mediated through conviction, and conviction is vulnerable to illusion. So déjà vu feels real, because it recruits the same neural networks that make genuine memory feel real. It is charged by the chemistry of salience, colored by the emotions of the limbic system, and validated by the same circuits that normally guard the boundary between past and present. It is an illusion, but one built from the very stuff of reality. And yet this fragility does not diminish human experience, it enriches it. To live with a brain that can blur lines between past and present is to live in a mind capable of weaving meaning from chaos. Déjà vu is unsettling, but it is also beautiful. A glimpse of the brain's creative power, its ability to generate depth even where none exists. And if déjà vu is so real, perhaps it carries a deeper purpose. Could it be, not just a glitch but an evolutionary safeguard, a way of testing the memory system, ensuring it stays sharp by occasionally checking the boundaries? To explore this possibility, we must turn to evolution itself and ask what role déjà vu may play in the survival of the mind. Imagine walking through a dense forest. The path curves, the air smells of moss and wet earth, and suddenly your brain insists, "I have been here before." The déjà vu strikes, not as an idle error, but with the weight of a warning. Could it be that this strange quirk of the mind once served an evolutionary purpose, that what feels like a glitch may actually be a survival feature hidden within your memory system? Evolution rarely preserves useless traits. If déjà vu occurs across most healthy brains, if it is common in youth, and appears even in people without illness, then perhaps it has value. One theory suggests that déjà vu may be a built-in safety check, a way for the brain to test whether its memory system is functioning properly. Your hippocampus and temporal lobe are constantly encoding and retrieving experiences. These circuits are fragile, and their accuracy is essential. If they fail, survival is at stake. You may not recognize danger, or you may misjudge whether a plant, place, or person is safe. Déjà vu could be the brain's internal rehearsal, firing the recognition system in the absence of true memory to ensure that the machinery works. Like a fire drill in a school, the sensation is unsettling but harmless, preparing the system for when recognition truly matters. Another view considers déjà vu as part of the brain's extraordinary ability to recognize patterns. Humans are survivalists of patterns. We notice rustling grass, the look of poisonous berries, the shape of a predator, but rapid pattern detection requires flexibility, and flexibility invites errors. Déjà vu could be the brain's way of handling false positives, reminding itself that familiarity can mislead. In evolutionary terms, a false alarm is safer than a missed recognition. It is better to think you've seen danger before, even if you haven't, than to miss the sign altogether. This might explain why déjà vu often comes with an emotional edge. It does not simply feel like memory, it feels like a signal. That emotional weight could once have pushed our ancestors to pause, to pay attention, to stay alert. The eerie feeling would not be a bug, but a feature, a way of sharpening awareness in uncertain environments. Evolution also shaped the brain to predict the future based on the past. This predictive coding system is crucial for survival. If you hear the crack of a branch, your brain predicts danger before your eyes confirm it. Déjà vu may be an artifact of this predictive system, arising when the brain anticipation is so precise that the present feels pre-lived. From an adaptive standpoint, this could be useful. A momentary sense of repetition primes you to be cautious, to test whether your environment matches past experience. Why then is déjà vu more common in youth? Because younger brains are still training. They are learning patterns at a rapid rate, encoding enormous amounts of novelty, testing the limits of recognition. Déjà vu may occur more often because the system is running stress tests, ensuring its circuits are tuned. As the brain ages and encounters less novelty, the testing diminishes. The sensation fades not because the system is broken, but because it has already been calibrated. If this view is correct, then déjà vu carries meaning far deeper than illusion. It is not just a mistake but a whisper from evolution itself. The mind rehearses recognition to keep you alive, even if the rehearsal feels uncanny. In this light, déjà vu is both an error and a triumph. An error because the moment is falsely marked as familiar, a triumph because it reveals the brain's constant vigilance. Think of it like a lighthouse beam sweeping across the sea. Most of the time it illuminates real ships and real dangers. Occasionally the light glints off empty water, creating a false signal, but the purpose of the beam is not diminished. Its duty is to search to ensure safety. Déjà vu may be that glint, unnecessary in the moment, but proof that the system is alive and scanning. Of course, theories remain theories until tested. The idea of déjà vu as a survival signal is compelling, but science seeks more than poetry. To move forward, we must examine what researchers have done to reproduce déjà vu in controlled conditions. Can the sensation be created in the lab? And if so, what does that reveal about its origins? You are seated in a quiet laboratory room, wires gently attached to your scalp, the hum of machines in the background. A researcher shows you a series of images on a screen: houses, landscapes, faces. Some are familiar, others entirely new. Then in the middle of the sequence, something strange happens. A picture flashes by, and a jolt of familiarity surges through you. You feel certain you have seen it before, but you have not. The scientist notes your response, smiling slightly. Déjà vu has just been recreated, on command, inside the laboratory. For years, scientists wondered if such a thing was even possible. Déjà vu seemed too elusive, too spontaneous, too personal, but carefully designed experiments have shown that the sensation can, indeed, be evoked. One method involves presenting participants with scenes that share similar layouts, say 2 different rooms with the same arrangement of furniture. Even if the objects differ, the structural similarity can trigger a feeling of recognition. The brain mistakes the new configuration for one it has seen before. Another technique uses virtual reality. Participants are guided through digital environments where certain spatial patterns are repeated in subtle ways. For example, a hallway may resemble one explored earlier, though the details are altered. In these conditions, many participants report a strong sense of déjà vu. The virtual world provides the brain with overlapping cues that confuse the recognition system, allowing scientists to watch the illusion unfold in real time. Even more striking are studies with patients undergoing treatment for epilepsy. In some cases, electrodes are placed directly on the temporal lobe to locate the source of seizures. When mild electrical stimulation is applied to the hippocampus or parahippocampal regions, patients sometimes report immediate déjà vu. They insist they have already lived the moment, though they know logically it is impossible. This shows that déjà vu is not just a psychological quirk, but a phenomenon rooted in specific neural circuits. Imagine the significance of this. A single pulse of electricity can summon the sensation of repetition, bypassing memory altogether. The feeling is as convincing as any real recall, yet it is artificially created. This demonstrates with clarity that déjà vu is a construct of the brain, not evidence of prophecy or mysticism. These laboratory successes confirm several key ideas. First, déjà vu can arise from pattern overlap when the brain encounters something similar but not identical to a past experience. Second, it can be triggered by direct activation of memory circuits, showing its dependence on the hippocampus and temporal lobe. Third, the conviction of déjà vu, the certainty that it is real, is built from the same networks that generate authentic memory. For science, these insights are invaluable. By studying how déjà vu can be recreated, researchers gain clues about how memory operates. It reveals the brain's reliance on pattern detection, its vulnerability to false signals, and its ability to construct conviction from partial information. In many ways, déjà vu serves as a natural experiment, a glimpse into the mechanisms of recognition that usually remain hidden. But beyond the data, think about what it means experientially. When participants in these studies report déjà vu, their voices often carry awe, even when they know it was artificially induced. They describe the sensation as uncanny, almost mystical, even while surrounded by machines and researchers. This shows that déjà vu cannot be reduced to theory alone. It carries an emotional weight that survives even under fluorescent lights. Philosophically, this suggests that the power of déjà vu is not just in its cause but in its effect. It unsettles you, forces you to pause, makes you question the solidity of time. Whether in a medieval village or a modern lab, the sensation retains its gravity. It is a reminder that the brain is not just an organ of logic, but of mystery. So science has proven that déjà vu can be evoked, dissected, and measured, yet the story does not end there. For many, the sensation still feels like something beyond biology, a glimpse of hidden layers of existence. To understand why déjà vu has long been linked to the paranormal, to visions of past lives and prophecy, we must step into the realm of history and human imagination, where science and superstition intertwine. You are sitting by a fire on a winter night, listening to an old storyteller recount strange happenings. Among the tales of spirits and omens, one story feels familiar. A traveller enters a town he has never visited, yet insists he knows every turn of its streets. The villagers whisper that he must have lived another life. What you are hearing is not just folklore, it is the way humans have long tried to explain déjà vu, the ghostly familiarity that resists logic. For centuries before neuroscience could even imagine brain scans or electrical recordings, déjà vu was placed in the realm of the mysterious. It was described as evidence of reincarnation, a soul's memory breaking through the veil of time. Others saw it as prophecy, a sign that the moment had been foreseen, destined, or dreamt of beforehand. Some cultures framed it as communication from ancestors, a reminder that the living and the dead share overlapping paths. Even in recent centuries, writers and philosophers treated déjà vu with reverence. Mystics claimed it was proof of hidden dimensions. Spiritualists used it to support belief in eternal return, the idea that life repeats itself in cycles. To them, the eerie sensation was too intense to be dismissed as accident. It had to be a window into something greater than the ordinary. Why did people lean towards such interpretations? Because the sensation of déjà vu is not weak. It does not feel like confusion or vagueness. It feels like certainty. When you stand in a place and feel you have been there before, the conviction is so strong that explanations must match its weight. Simple error feels insufficient. The human mind craves meaning equal to the intensity of the experience, so it turns to stories of destiny, past lives, or hidden knowledge. This is a pattern in human thought. When confronted with phenomena that defy explanation, people reach for the extraordinary. Lightning was once a weapon of gods, comets were omens, dreams were portals to other worlds. Déjà vu fit naturally into this tradition, a fleeting but powerful experience that seemed to hint at forces beyond perception. Writers seized upon it. Novelists like Tolstoy and Dickens gave their characters moments of déjà vu to signal fate, destiny, or inner turmoil. Poets described it as a haunting echo of the eternal. In some traditions, it became almost a romantic symbol, the idea that meeting someone and feeling déjà vu meant your souls had known each other before. The sensation was wrapped in narrative, in meaning, in the human hunger for stories that transcend the mundane. Today, science provides different explanations: electrical misfires, memory overlaps, perceptual delays, yet the paranormal associations have not disappeared. Even now, many interpret déjà vu as evidence of spiritual truths. Surveys show that a significant portion of people still link it to reincarnation or prophecy. This persistence reveals something about the human mind. Knowledge alone does not erase wonder. Even when told it is an illusion, people feel something deeper, and that feeling clings to mystery. What does this tell us about human nature? Perhaps that we are not content with bare explanations. We seek meaning as much as truth. Déjà vu, with its eerie conviction, becomes a canvas onto which we project our deepest questions. Do we live more than once? Is time circular? Does the mind reach beyond the present? Even if science explains the mechanics, the experience itself invites us to ask, and in that sense, the old stories still matter. They show us how humans have always grappled with the same sensation, weaving it into myths because myths were the language available. But while the stories endure, science has also drawn boundaries. It has tested, measured, and shown that déjà vu is not evidence of prophecy or past lives. To move forward, we must explore what science rules out, what déjà vu is not, so that the phenomenon can be appreciated not as superstition, but as a profound glimpse into how memory works. You are sitting with a group of friends, and the topic of déjà vu comes up. One person insists it must be evidence of past lives. How else could you recognize a place you have never visited? Another swears it is a glimpse of the future, a brief crack in the wall of time. You listen, nodding, perhaps even feeling tempted, because the sensation of déjà vu is so powerful that it begs for extraordinary explanations. And yet, science tells a different story, one that strips away these myths with quiet clarity. The most enduring belief is that déjà vu is a kind of premonition. People report déjà vu followed by an event that seems to confirm it, convincing them that they had foreseen the future. But careful study shows this is coincidence, not prophecy. The brain is a pattern detector, and when it experiences déjà vu, it sometimes links it retrospectively to later events that resemble the moment. What feels like foreknowledge is simply the mind stitching together coincidence after the fact. No experiment has ever shown that déjà vu predicts the future. Think of it like dreaming. You may dream hundreds of scenes, most forgotten. Later, when one resembles reality, you remember it vividly and ignore all the others. Déjà vu works in a similar way. The brain selectively highlights the rare overlap, turning chance into perceived destiny. Another popular idea is that déjà vu proves the soul has lived before, carrying memories from past lives, but neuroscience shows that the sensation arises from brain processes active in the here and now. Electrical stimulation of the temporal lobe can create déjà vu instantly, no mysticism required. If the sensation can be induced by a pulse of electricity or by overlapping patterns in virtual reality, it does not require metaphysical explanations. It is not a message from another lifetime, but a glitch in this one. Some traditions frame déjà vu as communication from spirits or ancestors. While compelling, this too falters under scientific scrutiny. Brain imaging demonstrates that déjà vu arises from the same memory systems responsible for recognition. It is a misfire, not a message. The sensation may feel like a whisper from outside yourself, but in truth it is the echo of your own neural machinery. If the science is clear, why do the myths endure? Because the feeling of déjà vu is not neutral, it carries conviction, and conviction demands explanation. Simple error does not feel like enough. Humans seek meaning equal to the intensity of their experiences, and so they dress déjà vu in stories of prophecy and reincarnation. Science can show that these are false, but it cannot erase the emotional power that keeps them alive. Philosophically, this persistence reminds us of the gap between explanation and experience. Science offers clarity, but experience demands narrative. Even when the cause is a neural hiccup, the sensation still feels like a brush with eternity. To dismiss that feeling outright would be to dismiss the human hunger for meaning. But debunking does not mean diminishing. The truth about déjà vu is no less extraordinary than the myths. It shows that memory is not a fixed archive, but a living, fragile process. It reveals how the brain constructs reality from overlapping signals, how conviction can exist without truth. That is not a lesser magic, it is a deeper one. So let us set aside prophecy and past lives, not with cynicism, but with appreciation. Déjà vu is not a supernatural message, it is a scientific mystery that reveals the architecture of the mind, and when understood this way, it still leaves us with awe. From here, we can see déjà vu, not as superstition, but as a window, an opening into the workings of memory, recognition, and the predictive nature of the brain. And it is to that window we must now turn, asking, what does déjà vu teach us about how human memory truly functions? You are walking through a crowded street, colors and voices colliding around you. A shop front catches your eye, and suddenly a ripple of déjà vu spreads through you. For a second, you feel you've stood here before, though you know it cannot be true. You shake it off and continue walking, but the question lingers, what just happened inside your mind? Science tells us that déjà vu is not merely a curiosity, it is a window into the deeper truth of how memory works. At its core, the brain is not just a storage device, it is a comparator, constantly checking the present against the past. Every new experience is scanned, broken into fragments, and matched against existing patterns. This system allows you to recognize a friend in a crowd or navigate a familiar street without effort. Déjà vu reveals this process at work because it shows what happens when the comparator produces a false match. The sensation proves that recognition does not require actual memory, it can be constructed by the firing of circuits alone. When the hippocampus, perirhinal cortex, and related regions light up in just the right way, the brain signals familiarity, even when no true memory exists. Déjà vu, then, is not an error of content, but an error of process. Modern neuroscience emphasizes that memory is predictive. You do not simply recall the past, you use the past to anticipate the present. When you step into a new environment, your brain generates expectations based on fragments of previous experiences. If the new scene fits those predictions too closely, it can feel like repetition. Déjà vu may be the mind's way of signaling that the present is unusually well predicted, so much so that it feels already lived. This insight deepens our understanding of memory itself. It is not a replay of the past, but a constant reconstruction, a blending of recollection and expectation. Déjà vu exposes the seams of that reconstruction, showing us that the feeling of memory can exist without the reality. One of the most striking lessons of déjà vu is the fragility of conviction. Normally, when you feel familiarity, it is accurate. You have been here, you do know this face. But déjà vu demonstrates that the feeling of truth can be manufactured. Conviction does not equal correctness. Your brain can generate certainty out of thin air. Philosophically, this raises profound questions. How much of what you consider knowledge rests not on fact, but on the feeling of knowing? How many of your beliefs are anchored not in evidence, but in the strength of conviction? Déjà vu is a small reminder of a larger truth, that the mind is as much a storyteller as it is a recorder. Yet to call déjà vu a glitch is to miss its deeper significance. Glitches reveal design. Optical illusions show us how vision works. Déjà vu shows us how memory and prediction work. It proves that the present is never raw. It is always compared, filtered, tested against the past. When that comparison misfires, you glimpse the machinery. And isn't that in its own way wondrous? The sensation that once inspired myths of past lives and prophecy is in reality a sign of the brain's constant labor to weave coherence from experience. It tells you that your mind is alive with patterns, searching, scanning, testing every moment of your life. Perhaps this is why déjà vu leaves such an impression. It is not only about neurons misfiring, it is about realizing that your perception of reality is built on fragile, intricate processes. You trust the solidity of the present, but déjà vu reveals its scaffolding. For a heartbeat, you see the wires behind the curtain. And yet, rather than making the world less meaningful, this realization can make it more so. If your brain can create conviction from illusion, then meaning is not given, it is made. Each moment of life, déjà vu reminds you, is an act of construction. You live not in pure reality, but in a reality filtered through memory, chemistry, and story. So déjà vu is more than a curiosity. It is a lens, a window into the brain's predictive machinery. It shows that memory is not fixed but fluid, not passive but active, and it reminds us of the beauty in imperfection, that even when the mind falters, it reveals its hidden brilliance. From here, one final step remains, to gather all that we have learned and reflect on what déjà vu ultimately means, not as prophecy, not as glitch, but as a reminder of the mind's fragile and fascinating beauty. After exploring déjà vu from every angle, memory errors, electrical sparks, predictive coding, and evolutionary theories, what remains is its paradoxical essence. Déjà vu is both ordinary and extraordinary. It happens to almost everyone, yet each time it feels unique. It is brief and fleeting, yet it can shake your confidence in reality. It is an error of the brain, but an error that illuminates the design of memory itself. We have seen that déjà vu is not prophecy, not reincarnation, not a mystical message from beyond. It is the brain misfiring, familiarity arising without memory. But in that misfire lies revelation. Déjà vu proves that recognition is not a photograph pulled from the past, but a construction built in the present. It shows that memory is fragile, predictive, and woven into every perception. You are walking home at dusk, the street lamps flickering to life one by one. The air is cool, and your steps fall into rhythm with your thoughts. Then it happens, a sudden wave of familiarity, as though you have walked this exact path, in this exact light, with these exact thoughts before. It passes quickly, but it leaves you wondering, not just about this moment, but about your mind itself. Why should such a fleeting sensation matter? Because it reminds us of the delicate architecture on which reality rests. Every day, you live as though the present is solid, the past is secure, and memory is reliable. Déjà vu reveals that these certainties are not fixed. They are created, moment, by your brain. When the system falters, you glimpse its workings, like gears suddenly exposed. Philosophically, this can be unsettling. If conviction can exist without truth, what else in life is built on feelings rather than facts? If memory can be simulated, how do you know that your other memories are real? Yet instead of eroding meaning, these questions can deepen it. They show that reality is not just given but experienced, not just external but internal. So what do you do with déjà vu? You do not need to fear it nor to romanticize it. Instead, you can treat it as a moment of awareness, a reminder that your mind is always comparing, predicting, weaving the present into your life story. When déjà vu arrives, it is your brain showing you its seams, pulling back the curtain to reveal the artistry behind perception. This shift of perspective allows déjà vu to become less of a riddle and more of a gift. It teaches humility, that what feels certain can be illusion. It teaches wonder, that even errors can be beautiful. And it teaches connection, that across cultures, ages, and histories, humans share this same uncanny sensation, proof that beneath our differences, our brains work in strikingly similar ways. Déjà vu is not a prophecy of the future, nor a memory of a past life. It is something even more fascinating, a glimpse of your brain's constant invisible labor to make sense of the world. It is the spark of recognition without substance, the echo of memory without origin, the reminder that the line between perception and imagination is thinner than you think. So the next time déjà vu finds you, whether on a quiet street, in a busy cafe, or in a conversation with a friend, pause, feel its strangeness. Let it remind you that your mind is both fragile and extraordinary, that your experience of reality is not flawless but constantly reconstructed, shaped by memory, prediction, and the chemistry of meaning. And when it passes, as it always does, you are left not with answers but with awe. Awe at the strange science of why déjà vu happens. Awe at the human brain forever predicting, comparing, weaving your life into a tapestry of moments both real and imagined. Awe at the fact that in its glitches as much as in its triumphs the mind reveals its true wonder. Because déjà vu is not just a glitch in memory, it is a mirror, and in its fleeting reflection, you glimpse not only the mystery of time, but the mystery of yourself.